Good morning, Sloan's Lake. How are you? Good morning. So anyway, for those of you who do not know me, my name is Chris, and I am actually the director of youth ministry here at Sloan's Lake, along with my wife, who's sitting right there, and my buddy Luke, who decided to mow the grass today and not show up to church. So we'll have to have a discussion about that later. But anyway, and the reason I'm up here is, as you might know, we're actually kind of doing a relaunch of our youth group this month. And Lee, in spite of his better judgment, said, well, we better give Chris a little FaceTime so people kind of understand who he is and what he's about. This is my family up here, and this is my family up here. And when Lee just mentioned a couple of minutes ago about going back to school, there was some cheers and there was some boos. But Ginny and I just kind of sat there because this is our first year that we don't have to worry about that. Our youngest son, or our youngest child, which is that one right there, is actually currently in Navy boot camp. So Ginny and I am 46, she is 44, we are empty nesters. We don't have to worry about it anymore. So we're just like, yeah, whatever. Whatever you guys do. But for just mentioning my son, we heard from him this week and he's fine, so he's doing great. When I learned that I was going to be speaking this week, I was okay with it until last Sunday. And then some very big questions popped into my mind, 3 in particular. This is the question mark part. There it is. First off, I don't do that this often. So this is only the second time I've spoken publicly in a church this year. You know, Lee does it every week. Leonore does it. Kellen's up here all the time. So I'm just going to warn you, this might take 3 minutes. It might take 3 hours. I don't know. So please bear with me. And also, you know, I'm a little bit nervous, and I'm kind of walking around seeing some of my friends, and one of my dear friends, a man that I call Dad, saw me with the mic on this morning and goes, oh, you're speaking today? Well, I'm going to be sure to turn my hearing aid down. I'm like, oh, Dad. Just right in the heart. And then he laughs, he chuckles, and says, no, I'll turn it back up. And I was like, all right, thank you. At least I know one person is listening. The second thing that got me really nervous was the topic, the subject is trending truth. And it really came home to me last week that I am not a trendy guy. I'm really not. For example, up until recently, my personal phone looked like this. Now, the reason I'm carrying this is my work phone. I'm actually on the clock right now, believe it or not only here, but at work. But recently, I upgraded to this monstrosity. Look at that thing. And I didn't know how to make this thing go, so I actually had to enlist friends to help me make this thing go. And I don't even know why I got it, to be honest with you, because I use a cell phone for just a couple of different things. For calling my mother once a week, for texting my wife, and I have one app that tells me how far I ride my bike. That's it. And so I've got all of this technology that, you know, in the past could have put people into space, and I call my mom. I mean, that's a great thing, calling your mom and all that, but I don't know that I need all that. But I felt this peer pressure to upgrade my device, because every time I would pull this thing out of my pocket, I would get laughed at. Yeah, and those are the guys that actually helped me set it up. And, you know, last week, Lee brought this slide up here, and he was talking about a director saying something bad on some social media thing. Guys, I'm not on social media at all. You will not find my footprint anywhere. I don't like social media. I'm not on any of that stuff. My wife is. Matter of fact, she's on social media right now. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Hold on. Back up. Remember to click on the live stream. And I was thinking about this morning too. This makes me a televangelist right now, and I'm not sure how I feel about that either. My mom could be watching me right now. Hi, Mom. How you doing? My mom lives in Utah. Who knows who could be watching me? I mean, I'm like with Jim Baker right now, and you all know what he did. That's not a good thing. People are seeing me anywhere and everywhere, and I'm really nervous. Okay, now I'm going to fast forward, going back to where I was. I will get on social media. Like, you know, Facebook has the like button. If somebody puts a dislike button on Facebook, I will join. Because I'll be, dislike. Yeah, I know the truth, dislike. That's just the kind of guy I am. I don't really have a social media footprint. And when Lee's pulling all this stuff up here last week, my eyes are this big going, great, what am I going to do? Because my world revolves around close, intimate relationships and what I hear and what I talked about people to other people and the people I work with. So that's where I really get what I have. I'm not in touch with movie stars and what they're doing. And quite honestly, when I see a movie, I rate it one of two ways, either good or bad. I don't care about the backstory. I don't care about the comic book. I don't really care. Was it entertaining to me? It was. So it was a good movie. Now, I'll say this, though. A couple of weeks ago, my wife and I saw the latest installment of Jurassic Park. And I will admit, it is getting a little bit tiring in Jurassic Park to whenever things are going down and everybody's going like this, that the T-Rex pops out of the bushes, eats something, roars, and then goes away. And the day has been saved by the T-Rex yet again. They need to do something else besides the T-Rex. I get that, so I do pay attention. And the third thing that made me really, really nervous was the content, the book of James. Now, some books in the Bible are pages and pages and pages, and you can have a couple of different people talk about stuff, and you're not going to step on each other's toes. But the problem with the book of James, it is a page. And you've had Leonore starting out, and then Lee last week, and then me this week, and then Lee again next week. So there's kind of no way of getting around stepping on each other's toes, because literally it's a page. If you haven't read it, read it. It'll take you 5 minutes. It's very good content, it's very strong content, and it's very upfront content. You don't have to look in your little, at the notes at the bottom of the page of James and go, what does that mean? Oh, that's what it means. It's very, very good, but very, very upfront content. So read it. It's really good stuff. And when I began to read James and study it, I didn't know what to do. I did not know what I was going to talk about. And this phrase came into my head. And for the life of me, I still don't know, because it seems so weird and it's so off topic almost. And the topic was, next slide please, what are we doing to make the world a better place? And I still honestly cannot figure out why that popped in my head. And I kept saying, okay, God, pop something else in here, because this just isn't working with me. And he's like, no, this is what you're going to talk about. I'm like, really? Come on. Okay. So I went with it. And it's okay, because it worked out. All the books in the New Testament are actually written to a corporation, collectively. They're written to a group of people, not an individual people. So everything in James is written to a group of people like this, a church, that get together, meet together, and worship, and have fun, and do all those other things. And I began to realize why this phrase was put in my head. Because what are we doing to make the world a better place? What are we doing is very obvious. We're having a block party in 2 weeks for our neighbors. If you fill out a contact card, $5 goes towards the fight against sex trafficking. If we as volunteers actually got up and left right now and didn't ever come back, Lee and Kellen and everybody else that worked here would be going, hello? This church has got an amazing volunteer presence. And all little churches like this rely on volunteers. They couldn't survive without them. And I'm not patting myself on the back or anybody else, but it's true. It really is. So as far as our church goes, when it comes to this, I give us a passing grade. We're doing okay in that department. We couldn't survive if we didn't. So it's really a good thing. So I began to break it down. It's like, okay, what is next? If we're doing okay as a church, if we're making the world a better place as a church, what about individually? Next slide, please. So it comes down to the question that really settled on me. What am I doing to make my world a better place? When I leave this place, do I take what I learned and what I reflect in here out there? And although it seems strange in the context of James, that is really what it's saying. What are we doing out of here, out there, to make our world a better place? A couple of weeks ago, Jenny and I were sitting down with friends, and we started talking about church. We often talk about church. And we all kind of came to the same mindset at one time that we do a lot here, but we don't do a lot out there. And honestly, if we do stuff in here and we don't do stuff out there, we've missed the point. We really have. And so while we're sitting there talking, I literally just said, okay, guys, let's do something. Let's pick something. I don't care what it is, just pick something and let's do it. And the investigation kind of started at that point. And I kind of threw it out there, guys, I don't care what we do as long as we don't work with cats. I'm not a cat guy. I actually suggested working at a home for retired Chihuahuas because I am a Chihuahua guy. And I actually did say those words. But there's a lot of things in this world we can do that aren't here that are out there that may not get noticed here, but would be noticed out there that would do the world a lot of good, wouldn't it? And that's what really hit me when I was talking about this. Next slide, please. I like saying that, by the way. Turn to James 2. Now, the translations I'm using are not your translations. They're out of the Message. So it's a little bit more trendy language, I guess you could say, or more modern language. So let's go ahead and read the Bible verse. Isn't it obvious that God talk without God acts is outrageous nonsense? If we talk a big talk, guys, and the book of James talks a lot about talking, it also talks a lot about actions. Isn't it obvious that God talk without God acts is outrageous nonsense? And I am guilty of this. I can talk a big game. I deal with teenagers. I've been talking a big game for like 15 years. But the God acts have not always been there. I'll be the first to admit that. So that conversation with a couple of close friends brought that home to me. Is I might have God acts here, but when I walk out that door sometimes, it doesn't go home with me. And that's on me. I know better. That's on me. So, what can you do? What can you do? You honestly don't have to go out and make a big deal about this. You don't have to come up and go, okay, small group or whatever it is, we're going to do something outside of church. We're going to volunteer somewhere. You can actually do that. Go back one, Crystal. It's okay, we're good. What you can do is it doesn't have to be a big deal. What you can do is do things at work. A young lady that I work with, single mom, I always hear her talking about the difficulty of her life, but one day she mentioned how she liked dark chocolate. So I've kind of made it a habit of from time to time leaving her dark chocolate bars. She has no idea it's me. Am I preaching to her? Am I changing her life? Probably not, but I might make that moment in her day just a little bit better because somebody cared enough to leave her a dark chocolate bar. And I'm sure every single person in this room can or has done something like this. Because the bottom line is what James talks about, and now you can go to the next slide, Crystal, is what we say and what we do matter. Lee brought up a slide last week, and somebody said something many years ago, and he didn't realize what he said and what he did mattered. We are all confronted on a daily basis, especially when we say something stupid, that what we say and what we do matter. I can remember one time Ed Nelson was up here preaching, and he told a story about a guy that he worked with. And this guy did everything. Cheated on his wife, cussed, stole, everything he could. And then one day Ed told him he was a Christian, and this guy's like, I'm a Christian too, because we are saved by grace and grace alone. He didn't realize that what we say and what we do matter. And what about the other big thing that James talks about? It's words. And this is the one that really gets me, is words. Next slide, Crystal, I think. A word out of your mouth may seem to be no account, but it can accomplish nearly anything or destroy it. Again, I've read this and I'm like reading it over and over again and going, oh boy. You've all heard the little nursery rhyme, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Quite honestly, break my bones. Don't say bad things. That hurts much, much worse. I know, I have never punched anybody in the face. I have never been in a fight, physical altercation with anybody. But if I reflect back on my own life, it is the damage that I've done is with my words and not my fists. It has been. What we say and what we do matter. To our children, to our spouses, to our coworkers. I can remember a time I was doing a job, and it was a very difficult physical labor job. And my job was to load an airplane with about 4,000 or 5,000 pounds worth of stuff in 7 minutes. And at the time, I just had I've always been like big this way, not this way, but this way. And I was just a very strong guy. I mean, I had that, the farmer strength, big forearms, kind of like Popeye. And this guy that was putting the stuff inside the airplane, he gave me the wrong thing, and I put it in the back of the airplane. And all of a sudden, as the airplane is getting full, I realized it was back there. And I walked out to this guy, and he's about this tall, little skinny guy, got right in his face and said, somebody should get fired for this. And I am bald, sweating, probably steaming because I'm so hot, and this guy's eyes are like this big. I could have literally gone and popped his head. And I left, walked out the door out of just sheer disgust. As soon as I got in my car, I deflated. God came to me at that moment and said, Chris, what did you just do? And I literally started calling everybody I had on my phone to apologize for my actions because I did not speak right. My actions did not reflect my faith. And when I went up to that man the next day, I put my hand on his shoulders, and he thought I was going to kill him. And I said, I apologize for my actions. I did not do the right thing. And his face, it was so funny, he just, it's okay, man. It's okay, I'm sorry for that. I did not reflect my faith. I did not reflect the fact that what I say and what I do matter. And I think we all have moments like that. But in the example I just gave you, if you have that moment where you don't do or say the right thing, say you're sorry. Apologize. Try to make amends. Go back. You can't go back in time, but you can say, forgive me. There's no forgiveness in James, but quite honestly, when we talk about what we say, asking for forgiveness is a huge part of that. Because I've been married as of this coming Tuesday, I've been married for 25 years. Clap for her, not me. But you don't know how many times in 25 years I've had to walk up to Ginny and go, forgive me for what I have said to you. Because I'm just a village idiot. Is this making sense? Is this making sense? There's this contingency on this side of the room. I've been kind of looking this way. When my family picture popped up, I actually wanted to have the little fun fact pop up too. And the fun fact that I actually gave Lee, and he may have not used this on purpose. He may be saying, Chris, don't say this because you're a youth director and people may not want you to know this. But the fun fact about me is if you make me laugh really hard, I will pass out. Now, you're probably thinking, if my kid is in a van with you, I do not want you passing out. That's obviously a bad thing. It's only happened twice. But the reason I'm not making eye contact over here is because I'm afraid that this little group over here is going to try to make me laugh and pass out in front of you guys. The first time I passed out, we were at a party at my house, and we were watching the stupid show Sharknado, and they were making me laugh. I think it was YouTube videos. And I got up to go into my kitchen. I got in my kitchen. The last thing I remember is me hitting the wall. That's how I passed out. The next time we were actually at an IHOP, and they were again making me laugh. And I put my head down on the table. The world went very dark, very quiet for a few seconds, and then everything came back, and I lifted my head and said, wow, that was weird. I just passed out again. So that's why I can't look over here. So you guys stop. That's their hobby, is making me pass out. I'm pretty sure there's a board somewhere that I don't know about that they have that's actually not just making me pass out, but that's it. You know, we're going to kill Chris. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of money on this. Who is actually going to be the one that does it? And I don't know how much money's involved, but I'm sure it's in the thousands by now. It's got to be. But, yes, to make me pass out. And trust me, that wouldn't be, if they killed me with laughter, it would not be, everybody would be like, we actually did it. All right. When's that food going to show up? I mean, nobody would even lose any sleep. Ginny wouldn't even blink. She'd be like, yeah, you guys finally did it. Huh. When are those cheese fries coming out? What's going on? I love my job. Working with youth is an awesome thing because you get to make relationships. Crystal, where are we at? I got a little off track here because of this over here. What's the next one? Oh boy, what's the next one? Sometimes in life, after you realize what you say matters, what you do matters, and that we're all called to do something in life, sometimes you'll come up with this thought. And the thought is, I've got to do something. That's what we came up with a few weeks ago when we were sitting down. There's something in this world we've got to do something about. And to me, that's what the book of James is about, is watching what you say, watching what you do, and actually doing things. It's an action book. And when I began to prepare for this, I recalled a story that I heard in college. Yes, I actually went to Christian college to become a volunteer youth leader. I don't know why. It just seemed like the right thing to do at the time, so that's what I did. And in one of my Bible studies classes, the professor brought in a guest speaker. And this man actually reflects the I've got to do something moment, what James to me is really about. This man was an emergency room doctor, and he specialized in saving people that had overdosed on drugs, whether they were trying to take their own life or whether it was heroin. They would bring him lifeless corpses into an emergency room, and he would send them out a living human being. And he was good at his job. He was on every board of directors and everything else in this entire country. He was that good. And when you heard him speak, you could hear that confidence, if not a little bit of ego, in his voice. But something happened to him where it came into this somebody's got to do something moment. It was on September 11th, 2001, and he was sitting in his office while the buildings were coming down, and he felt alone. He didn't know what to do. He felt hopeless. This brilliant man who could literally take life and save it with his two hands was alone and afraid. And he was sitting at his desk, and he looked over at his library, and he noticed a Bible. He said, I didn't know where it came from or who gave it to me. So he goes across and he gets it off the shelf, and he opens it up. He doesn't know where to look. He's a doctor. He's not a theologian. So he starts thumbing through. And by some chance, he ends up in the New Testament. And he starts reading just the red words in the New Testament, which are the words that Jesus spoke. And in that moment, he found peace, and he found harmony, and he found hope. Not by doing great Bible studies, but by simply reading the red words that Jesus spoke 2,000 years ago. And at that moment, this man who had saved lives began to save and impact lives in another way. At that moment, he started a ministry to where not only would he save those lives, but when that life was there and he could talk to them, he would hand them a Bible, and his words were simply this: read the red words. That's it. And that became his ministry. So that one moment, the buildings are coming down and he's feeling helpless, and he realizes it's not all about him and he's got to do something more. He finds it in a Bible, in a moment of tragedy, comes up with a ministry, and that's how he's impacting the world. Somebody asked him as he was finishing up, he's like, so tell us about one of the patients that really sticks out in your mind. He goes, probably the last one. A girl had come into the hospital and she had overdosed on heroin. She was dead, and he brought her back. And he was making his rounds, and he went by and talked to her, and he had already given her the Bible. And he saw that she was reading it. And he asked, what are you reading? And she looks up and smiles at him and says, the Psalms. That's where, and he walked away from her. At that point, he never saw that girl again. But this man understood that what we say and what we do matter. He could have easily said, and he had probably, I'm speculating, he probably before had said, well, I saved your life, goodbye. See you next week when you overdose on heroin again. Probably very bitter and vindictive at one point. But that changed when he realized that he could do more. He could impact more. And it was simply giving somebody a Bible and saying, read this part. That's all he did. I myself had this moment as well. Somebody's got to do something in this very church. And I know I've talked about what we do outside of this church, but sometimes it begins inside this church, and for mine it did. A Saturday, probably 13 or 14 years ago, I was relaxing in my room, and all of a sudden I hear Jenny say, Chris, we can't get Jason. I was like, what? We can't get Jason. At the time, we had just lost our youth pastor, Steve Almquist, a wonderful man that you know him well. You served with him, and he had gone back to Ohio, this place that I don't even know that God knows exists, but Steve went there to be a youth pastor. I guess they needed him more than us because, like I said, I think Ohio is just like a blank spot on the map. So he went there, and I was on the board of elders at the time, and we were trying to come up with a new youth leader and wanted to hire somebody. And it came to be Jason Nelson, Ed's son. And I'll tell you what, I fought that thing tooth and nail because I'm like, we're just going to get another Ed in this place, and that's the last thing in the world we need. But I met Jason and realized that Jason was not Ed. He was like his mom. I was like, hey, we could use more Sherrys around here. I love Ed. You guys know that. But that's how I felt at the time. And then Jenny comes in as an elder and goes, Chris, we can't get him. I sat up out of bed, and that was the thought in my mind. Chris, you've got to do something. You've worked with youth before. You know what to do. It's now your job to do it. And I did. And what has come out of that has been a lot of things. Heartbreak, joy, friendship. All because I had that moment. Realized I had to do something, that my actions were going to matter, that things were on the line that I could not comprehend at the time, that actually came true, that I had to take action. I did. Now, I am, again, not patting myself on the back, and quite honestly, I am one of those guys who believes firmly in you do not let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. You normally would not hear this stuff from me, because I don't think we're supposed to talk about it. But sometimes when you get on this stage, on this platform, with a video camera looking at you, and 2 and 2, 3, 4, how many other pairs of eyes are in here? That you have to do something to inspire people, to get people up, to get people moving. And sometimes you have to talk about yourself, even when you're not comfortable with it. I don't expect pats on the back for what I do. But there's sometimes you have to talk about yourself. And that's what I'm doing today. I also understand we have a lot of new people in this church that may have teenagers. And maybe you're up against that, I've got to do something. Maybe you've never been to church in your entire life, and all of a sudden one day that you realize that this is relevant, that God does exist. There's this guy named Jesus, and he did a lot of stuff 2,000 years ago. There's this thing called sin, and there's good and bad in the world. and you decided to bring your family to church. They've never been here. They've never been to any church. And then you got some guy like me saying, hey, you guys should come join the youth group. And they're going, youth group? What's a youth group? What's a youth leader? What do you guys do? Are you guys going to like eat me or something? I'm like, no, we're not. We're just average people. You know, I go to Vegas 2 or 3 times a year. That's pretty average. And maybe that is your I've got to do something moment. And now here's where the plug for my youth group comes in. If that is you, I ask you to give us a chance. Trust us with your teenager. Because I'll tell you what, I've known that teenager and that teenager since they were teenagers, and they actually grew up to be fine young, you too, all right, but good things can come out of youth ministry. And if your thing that you're beginning to realize is the fact that maybe your kids, your teenagers don't know Christ because they haven't gone up through the Sunday school system since they were young, give me a chance. Let's do this part together. Let's do the I have got to do something thing together. Because quite honestly, as a youth leader, I don't want to parent your child. I want to help you parent them. Give you some advice, because we have raised 2 teenagers for the good and the bad. We've seen it all of it. I'm not kidding you, all of it. And I don't want to raise your kids. I just want to be a resource. Ginny and I both want to be a resource for you to help you raise your kids. That's it. We want to teach them about the Bible. We want to teach them about God. We want to teach them about the sacrifice of Jesus. And we also want to have a squirt gun fight at the exact same time. Because that is called youth ministry. What's the next slide, Crystal? Oh, she's back there. Oh, I'm out? Oh, thank goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, we're relaunching our youth group this month. And I want to have the honor of being your teenager's youth guy. I'm not a youth pastor. I'm not ordained. I'm just some guy who one day woke up and realized I had to do something, went and spent a whole lot of money that I didn't have on an education that I'm just doing a volunteer job for, and I want to be that for you. Ginny wants to be that for you. We're a couple. We actually do this together because, quite honestly, I don't know what it's like to be a teenage girl, but she does. She doesn't know what it's like to be a teenage boy, but I do, and I haven't forgotten. I have not. And maybe there's a few things I should have forgotten. Ladies and gentlemen, as I close out, I want to pray. I want to pray for this church. I want to pray for you. I want to pray for all of us that might have that moment of understanding we got to do something with ourselves, that our actions and words matter, and that we are called to be a moving church, not a stagnant or just a sit-here church. I was looking for another S word and I forgot what it was. I've done this message in my head like 100 times in my car, and every time I get up here, I forget what I'm going to say. Father God, thank you. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to spread your word to the people that have never heard it before. Father, bring home to us that we are a people called to understand that what we say and what we do matter, and that we all have moments in our lives that make us say, I've got to do something. And when those thoughts come, that I pray, Lord, they're not fleeting glimpses of what you want us to do, but actual reality. Lord, thank you for this church. Thank you for the people. And I pray for everyone that we can touch, because we're going for 1%, but 1%'s got to be one person at a time before you can get 1%. I think we're up to this fight, Lord, but you got to be with us. Thank you, Lord, for everything. In Jesus' name, amen.